Welcome to the Lightbulb Moment podcast. You are listening to episode 36, The Importance of Remote Working. In this episode, Joe and Mike discuss online learning in the context of the coronavirus, focus a discussion on remote working, and wrap up on how conferences are changing because of the coronavirus. Welcome everyone. This podcast is going to be slightly different from what we normally do. The bulk of this episode was recorded at the end of 2019. It was a planned topic on remote work and live online learning. Now we bumped it to make way for our reflective Christmas special that we decided to do in December. And then we decided to not go with it in January, and we didn't release any podcast in January. And we decided not to go over it in February in light of the recent events concerning the coronavirus.
Yeah, we wanted to avoid putting out a podcast that looked like it was in response to what was going on in a time of change and uncertainty around the outbreak.
Yeah, I was hoping the coronavirus would quickly fizzle away. Obviously, this isn't the case, and it remains a worldwide issue impacting many people's lives in tragic circumstances.
Yeah, it's been an awful time for so many people. However, our role is not to add to that frenzy around a complicated topic, as there are plenty of better places to find that information.
Absolutely. Instead, we're going to use the second half of this episode for what we recorded a few months ago, the detail about the benefits and challenges of remote working and live online learning. Before we get into the section already recorded, Joe, let's briefly touch upon the poignant and relevant parts of this in light of the current events now. But let's keep it focused on the remote working point and the live online learning.
Yeah, we're definitely going to focus on the areas that I know about.
Okay, brilliant. So one of the reasons we decided to upload this now was an article you sent me from Donald Clark. Would you like to talk us through it?
Sure. Donald Clark, as many of you know, is the CEO at Wildfire Learning, director at Learning Pool, and so much more. He wrote a short blog post on his blog called Plan B about the current coronavirus situation and climate change and how all of this should accelerate the necessity for online education. And the article breaks it into three main points. 1, a virus can thrive when lots of people are together in the same location, such as universities, work, and conferences. 2, climate change and the cost of environmental travel. And 3, the resources used for the amount of paper and printing that goes into various face-to-face events.
Yes, it was an interesting read, and I will link the blog into the podcast description. Now, we often talk about the physical money and the cost of travel and accommodation for an organisation. And I know you've mentioned the green element a few times. I think the paper cost for physical materials is something we've never really mentioned before.
Yeah, it can be really easy to get wrapped up in reducing the travel expenditure as if it's the most important thing for you and your organisation. But climate change is obviously a big issue and a driver here too. Something I often see circulate on Facebook and has had a big impact on me is this saying: we don't need a handful of people doing recycling perfectly. We need millions of people doing it imperfectly. And I take a lot away from that. It's the little things that can add up.
I think that's a great saying. And I've been seeing things, different documentaries or like you say, things on Facebook or YouTube. And I think it is all about those things of we can all do those little things, try not to waste water, turn off appliances where we can.
Yeah, and I think going back to Donald's point, this is where all aspects of online education can have an impact. This means learning from others and from resources, e-learning, live online learning, and of course much more.
Yes, and Donald gives some information about the environmental impact of creating paper. And it made me think about the fact that sort of all of our learning materials are electronic. We literally have an electronic brochure, our website, handouts, we teach virtually.
Yeah, all of those are available online. People can choose to print them, obviously, and that might be right for individuals, but we don't add to that. And this is just one of the things that's a happy byproduct of this way of teaching and learning.
Yeah, and I guess sort of being as sensitive as we can, what about the first section of Donald Clark's blog about the coronavirus, where he talks about conferences and them being a vehicle to spread not just ideas, but other negative things also?
Well, I don't think we need to get into this in the light with what's going on right now. But lots of people together is obviously normally not a major reason for concern unless there are extenuating circumstances.
True, but there are a number of high-profile conferences that have changed recently. The Adobe Summit, scheduled for Las Vegas in March, is now an online-only event. Cisco Live Melbourne in March has been cancelled. Facebook's F8 Developer Conference in May has been cancelled.
Yeah.
Google Cloud Next for April is now only online. And I'm sure there's more that we haven't mentioned.
Yeah, there's loads more, and good points. Let's come back to that a little bit later, actually. I think a better way to look at this now is, why are you having this large conference or this learning intervention in the first place? What is the learning need to get everyone out of the office or away from their normal jobs for this intervention?
Is this, I know you've mentioned on a previous podcast, I think it was a previous role many years ago that you had, where you would literally fly to other countries for a dedicated week or 3 days worth of training, and that was almost their entire year's worth of training for that department.
Yeah. So that was 12 or 13 years ago, and that's how the company did it. We didn't know about or embrace the concept of live online learning, and people in those offices around Europe, they needed training, but did they need to have it all in one go just for those few days, that one time a year I got out there? Well, of course not.
Yeah, and I guess this is an enforced learning period, isn't it? Regardless of when people needed to actually learn or do something.
Yeah, exactly. And we need to look at the business needs, first of all, of course, the learning outcomes, and what you want those people to be able to do in their jobs. And of course, a 2-hour virtual classroom session live online each month would be much better than all-day training session once a year. And you could use live webinars for more people from a variety of offices so that people get to know each other more, and all sorts of other things for the everyday learning as well.
And I guess if your organisation has in place the ability to create, distribute and deliver live online learning, you give yourself the option to do something different if you need to.
Yeah, and if you've got a team of facilitators who can deliver and potentially create live online sessions, then yes, you can decide which is best for the right blend of so many learning options out there. You could still have a big face-to-face day and then supplement it with smaller online interventions during the year. This helps save costs. And if you start moving some of your more expensive conference-style days into live online sessions. And on the topic of costs and saving money, I've got a question for you, Mike.
Did you?
Yeah. Don't sound too worried. I said I was going to ask you about financial impact and markets.
Yes, you did. You did, didn't you? Well, I'm not going to go into the financial markets because, quite frankly, it's pretty boring. This is not a financial podcast, and quite honestly, I don't really know enough about it. What I do know is basically what I've read on BBC and, different articles posted online. And that is basically that as of recording this podcast, basically all the financial markets are falling.
So, but what does that mean?
Well, if the markets fall, it can obviously reduce the value of the big companies as their stocks drop. This then has a knock-on effect. Confidence drops. Organisations tighten their spending to weather a potential downturn in profits. Inflation could drop or stop, and then just general bad stuff happens at that point. And if the coronavirus continues as it is into the summer, it's looking like there's going to be a greater financial impact that will be felt worldwide, basically.
Okay, so if we refocus that, what about for live online learning?
Well, I think in general for learning interventions in organisations, we would assume there would be a potential cut in spending for them. Many L&D teams they have to work for their budget they have. And if profits reduce for the organisation or the company, then it doesn't seem unreasonable that budgets would be squeezed for L&D teams or, to fund those learning interventions. As for live online learning, I have no idea, really.
Well, that's helpful, Mike. Thanks.
well, the truth is nobody really knows exactly how any of this is going to happen with the financial markets or, what is going to happen. I mean, potentially for live online learning, there could be an increase in demand because of the, the circumstances surrounding, the potential of this financial downturn. It could be that organisations instead just tighten the purse strings on the L&D budgets, even at their own detriment, not getting live online learning in place or something that could potentially help them.
Yeah, it's interesting. Across Twitter, LinkedIn, various groups on Facebook, Slack, and others, I'm seeing more and more companies have a freeze on unnecessary international travel, just as a precaution, really, and that face-to-face training is being cancelled or postponed. I'm also seeing a lot of people needing to suddenly deliver live online learning internally or consider it perhaps for the first time in their own business. So potentially investing now in live online learning to deliver within an organisation or support remote workers is more likely. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, exactly. But I think this angle with investing into live online training, remote working, the benefits and things like that is basically what we tackled in the recording of the podcast that we already had. So I think, should we just go to that recording and then we can always come back to this after that recording about maybe some of the conferences and how this is going to work?
Okay, but before we do that, I do just want to wish all of our listeners, obviously, good health and hopefully to hear some more positive news in the coming days and weeks.
Absolutely agree with you, Joe. Now let's go to the section we already had recorded at the end of 2019. Joe, today we're talking about remote working and live online learning, the benefits and the challenges along the way. Now, we both remote work and run Lightbulb Moment that way. We get our clients online, we have consultations with them, train their staff, we do it all online. So let's start with remote working. But first, you've been doing it longer than I have. So I want to get your thoughts first.
Okay, so I started remote working in 2013, so that's 7 years now. The same time I started to fully embrace live online learning and it became my focus.
And how did you find it?
It was definitely odd at first, especially when it came to delivering training remotely. I remember printing out pictures of my attendees. I had them stuck up on my wall. It really helped me to visualise them as people when I first started out.
And actually working from home?
Well, I hear lots of people say that they couldn't do it. They don't have the patience or the willpower. But generally, I think that broad sweeping statement isn't true. I think it can be harder for some people, but it's about finding the right setup and the right mindset for you. We can all motivate ourselves to clean the house, defrost the freezer and the likes, and we don't get distracted by the myriad of devices and entertainment systems we have. And so remote working is similar. But you found it quite difficult to start off with though, didn't you, Mike?
Yeah, I found it hard for a lot of different reasons. And I think one of them was my previous job, for the bulk of it, the sort of the last bit, it wasn't like this. But for the majority of it, I was working in a big open plan office. So you could literally shout down to one end of the office and we were all there. And so we had that sort of social element. And of course, so you can get distractions that way, you can get background noise, but you do also get that little sort of chatter and those little conversations and advice and tips. And I found that was quite a big sort of culture shock to all of a sudden working remotely.
Yeah, because that social element has gone away. So I found that too, to some extent. And I think you don't always realise just how much value you get from those water cooler moments and the general work conversation when you're grabbing a coffee or something.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the things, we all have those points you feel a bit less motivated. I don't know about our listeners, but I know sort of Thursday.
I'm sure they're all much more motivated than we are.
Yeah, probably. But what I'm saying is, you get to Thursday at 3:30 and your motivation starts to drop, but all of a sudden you have a chat with someone and it doesn't have to be about TV or whatever. It's just they're having a problem with a client or a work situation. You resolve it for them, or you just talk it through even if you don't resolve it. And all of a sudden when you get back to your desk you think, right, actually, I'm empowered. I'm ready to I've got my drive back. And I think that's what you can miss by working remotely.
Yeah, and that's why that social element, we started to do a lot more of what we call co-working. So we use Skype or Zoom or another live online platform like Adobe Connect, whatever. We put our webcams on, we have our microphones on, and we just work and do our stuff. And we have somebody on a screen, and it's sort of like you're sitting next to each other, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And this is one of the things, it does make me think back to when I was working in an office where I could literally just turn left and say, oh, Bob, what about this? Or turn right and say, oh, how about this? Or whatever it is. And it's the same with you, that, fine, we're on Skype or we're in Adobe Connect and we're just there typing away. And then all of a sudden I can sit there and say, oh, I'm emailing XYZ. What was it we wanted to say again? And it's just, you can instantly do it as if we were side by side, rather than sort of sitting there and going, typing to you on Skype or whatever, oh, can I give you a call? It's just an instant connection, isn't it?
It is. And I think it really helps with those small things, like where I'm going, oh, but what's another word for such and such? Whereas whenever we've tried to do that on Skype, it just ends up being a mess of a conversation. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, oh, don't worry. But I think that element of feeling like you're with someone, it takes away the loneliness.
I think you've got it right there. It's kind of, it can be a little bit lonely, but you can sort of mitigate that with this live thing. And I really like what you say about where we've tried to type to each other about a sort of a complicated issue, and you've got the text and then I'm reading the wrong tone and then I've got the wrong point. And it's far easier just to be, or have the webcams on and just sit there and go, oh, right, you meant this? Yep, okay, cool, boom, it's done. So I think you've got some really good points there. And a few times we've actually done, we've tried to do a co-working morning or afternoon in our live online platform, where we've tried to get some people from your learning network together. And we've done it, I think we've done it twice, and it's worked really well. Well, I thought it was really nice.
Yeah. We should do some more of that. We've paid for the platform, we might as well utilise it. And there's often a big stigma attached to allowing staff members to work from home.
If I could jump in, definitely big stigma. I remember working in my previous job, and we got a hosted network solution, so we could easily remote access in. I remember I worked from home one day for whatever reason. It just made sense that day. I had stuff going on, or whatever it was. And I made sure I did tons more work than I probably do in the office, because I wanted to make sure, we had like a project management system. I was like, tick, 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 done. I was emailing people for every 5 minutes. Oh, I've just done this. I've just done that. But I still got into work the next day and people were like, oh, how was your day off?
Oh, really?
Yeah, exactly. And because obviously different cultures, different, I was in an accountancy firm where it's, billing is done every 8 minutes kind of thing,
Okay,
so it's kind of, if you're not in the office, you're not working. So obviously there are different cultures, but as you say, as I interrupted you, there is that stigma attached to it.
Yeah. And this can often be a misconception that when we're at home, we're not doing that much work. Now, I won't get into all the details of workflow systems, project management, and so on, but just focusing on this one element of using a live online platform, you can get your team who are in the office or in different offices and the ones working remotely to log in at certain points to have meetings, catch up, co-work, even just kind of to see each other and see what's going on in the office around them. It can all promote not only efficiency, but also normalise that remote working as well.
I love that idea, and that's kind of taking that co-working element of what we do. And I really like that idea that even people internally in the office are still connected to, say, Adobe Connect or Zoom or GoToMeeting, whatever it is you've got, and those remote workers, so that you still can have that chit chat if you want, even though you've got somebody working from home, but you can also have that productivity and get everyone sort of feeling included.
Yeah. And that point is of normalising remote working, because when somebody's in, the Berlin office, you don't assume they're not working. You assume they're working. But if they're working from home, there can be that assumption that they're sitting on the sofa in their underpants. And whilst that's true for some people, the point is the organisation and the individuals need to get value out of that remote working.
Yeah, for sure. And we have a variety of platforms to chat with clients on. Like when we have consultations, often we would say, let's just have a chat on Skype, or let's log into our Adobe Connect platform. Or if they've got their own platform, we will say, let's have a chat in your GoToMeeting software. The point is, we're speaking with them live online, hearing from them, actually sort of picking up on their voice. If we've got webcams on, seeing their face. Yeah.
And it doesn't seem odd to us to have that email conversation with somebody who's new to us, which then turns into speaking to them live online for 20 minutes or an hour, whatever it is. And the thing is that technology is developing really fast. You blink and you miss it. Apple FaceTime, how long has that been around now? But for some people, still have no idea about it. Skype, webinars, virtual classrooms, they're all starting to normalise now virtual communication and interactions. It's natural to us, to you and me, I mean, and some of the people we speak with this way. And it's the way technology is going and developing.
Yeah, for sure. But thinking about this, what about some of the drawbacks off the top of your head?
Well, actually, I think there are more positives for us to go on about. I don't know if this messes up your podcast plan or not, but I'm going to carry on with the positives because the ease of starting a conversation, it's no longer such a big deal to get someone to travel somewhere, set aside an afternoon or a whole day just for a simple meeting.
Yeah, for sure, and it's par for the course of you messing up my podcast plan. So don't. I'm used to it by now. But I think it can take some people by surprise when I will get an email through, and maybe somebody's filled in a form on our website saying, they're interested in virtual classrooms, and often I'll reply with some basic information, but then at the end I will say, why don't we just jump onto our Adobe Connect platform, or if you've got a platform, or let's get on Skype and let's just have a chat. And I feel like sometimes people they almost have that point of sitting there and thinking, well, actually, we haven't had enough emails. It almost seems like there's a quota of we have to have 8 emails back and forth before we can initiate a voice, an actual meeting. And I wonder if because some of the people we deal with this way, or just a lot of people are used to the fact that booking in a face-to-face meeting means somebody getting in the car, somebody getting on the train, out of the office, one person's out of the office, or you've got to book a conference meeting room or whatever it is.
It's so much more hassle, cost and time and effort that you need something to almost justify that. Whereas a phone call or a Skype meeting, you can just jump on that. It's really quick. It's that kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things of we've agreed this day, here's a calendar invite. Boom, it's done kind of thing. It's not taking a lot of time. Everyone's still at their office. Everyone goes straight back to work. All of a sudden, it's just life could be this easy. Yeah, exactly. We've had consultations with people where it's got to 1 o'clock or whatever. We've all dialed into Skype and they're like, I'm just finishing this email. Okay, hi Joe, hi Mike, how are we doing? And then it's we'll get to the end and we say, what we're going now, and they say, I'm literally going straight into a meeting or going straight into delivering this training session. But we've had an hour of their time, but we haven't taken that extra half hour before or that extra half hour afterwards for the travel.
Yeah, we haven't been running late because of the motorway or anything like that. And I think, in some ways this is normal if we think about telephone conversations. But telephone conversations and something like a Skype meeting or a meeting with webcam, especially when you're involving a few people, I think it's still just that little bit newer for some people, not for everyone. And that adds extra value, I think, to the whole quality of the conversation.
Yeah, and what about this lack of physically being in the same place? You're not in their conference meeting hall. You're not seeing them face to face.
So it can obviously have a greater impact, but it depends on what you need to be doing. If you are a salesperson and you're trying to sell something that's physical, then doing that entirely virtually, obviously, will have its own challenges. I think anything that doesn't have a big physical component is obviously less of a barrier. And I say a physical component because obviously you can still visually display items quite well with a webcam. And we've spoken to people in the live online platforms. We've shared our brochure, for instance, and we've both gone to page whatever that they're asking questions about. And you can do that in the platform, so you're both seeing exactly the same thing and pointing at the same thing, just virtually.
Yeah, and that's some brilliant tips there, actually. And this is one thing I remember years ago, I've mentioned it in a few podcasts, I was working in sort of telesales, basically. And it was one of those things that I was always kept on saying, people don't understand the brochure. I need to basically screen share with them and say, right, you don't understand this line. Let me explain, so that we could go through it. So, but what are the best elements to remote working?
That's a tough question because there are loads. I always joke and say I can have garlic at lunchtime, but that's probably not the main point that you want me to think about here. I think on a serious note, it's about freedom. In our position, for the most part, we can focus work when we want and need to. If I want to work late one night, I can, and I can take some time off at another point. And I know some people obviously may not have control over those working hours. Even whilst they're remote, they might not be able to do that. But certainly within any type of remote working, I think there's an element of freedom and choice and identifying where you're most productive and managing your time around that.
Yeah, for sure. I always find I'm better in the morning. And as I've already alluded to, you know, it gets to 3:30 for me, Joe, and I'm
yeah,
done.
You're off.
You know, if I don't.
Whereas I find the opposite. I'm a night owl, so you're saying goodbye, and I'm like, I'm just ramping up into productivity now.
yeah, exactly. But what about I guess, you know, you're saying like sort of ramping up to productivity. You're a night owl. How much does the environment impact what you feel whilst remote working?
Yeah. I think it helps a lot. So in my house, I've got my own office. I've got a bedroom for my office. And within the size and what it is, I've tried to get it how I like it, how I want it, and how it works for me. I don't have somebody else coming in and taking my stuff, moving it around. I can just mould it to what I like, have the pictures up that I like, the colours, you know, whatever it is that promotes my creativity and my efficiency. But what about you, Mike? Because you don't have a dedicated office.
No, unfortunately, at the precise moment, hopefully this will be changing in a not too distant future. But I basically have lodgers at my house. So my bedroom is my office. I can't sort of dedicate a separate room or a separate bedroom as an office and have sort of those two different locations. And it can get difficult when, you know, you've just done sort of 9 till 5, or, you know, as I say, sort of 10 till 3:30. And but when you've done all day in the same room, which is then your sort of social room, it can get difficult. And, you know, it's one of those odd things that all of a sudden it gets to 5:00. I do work to 5:00 sometimes. And all of a sudden you close Excel and then you open Facebook. And that, it doesn't feel like you've got that, I've closed the door on the office and now I've opened the door to my house. It's just a bit bizarre sometimes.
Yeah, I really appreciate being able to close my office door. It feels like I'm done for the day and enter my home life. Although I do find not having a commute, like my commute is going downstairs. And that sometimes I don't have that kind of switch off time where like a drive or a train ride home or something just means you like go through some things in your mind. So that's a different thing. But actually being able to shut something away in some fashion, I think is really important. But you manage it really well. And everyone who remote works adapts. And I haven't always had an office at home. I did used to have, I think it was a cabinet or something, and I just had like space on top of a set of drawers or something, was the very first point I had. So you just adapt to what you've got and the best possible situation you have. You don't need a dedicated office if you can't do that or if it's not right for you. Others might prefer it. Yeah, and I think you've got that right. That it's personal preference, isn't it? I'm sure. And what's possible. You might not have the option like you don't at the moment. Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure people would just love on their sofa with their laptop, you know, the other half walking through whatever, and you've got that kind of that co-working social element or whatever it is. And other people might be like, no, I need a shed at the end of the garden, which is my own private space or whatever it is. Yeah. Let's change gears a bit from our personal experience and focus on how it can have a positive impact on the organisation. Well, firstly, I think if you can implement the ability to make this happen within your organisation, obviously you should. It's having the infrastructure in place and ready to go as and when people would like to or need to use it. That doesn't mean switching completely over to a remote virtual team. It's just making sure that job roles that can do it have the option to. Yeah, so you're saying that if you can get a system in place and have it ready as a backup or as an option, it's generally a good idea to have that. Yeah, of course. There'll always be times when, if you have the system in place, then people would take the opportunity to use it. Without that option, they can't. And that can have a negative impact on the organisation. Calling in sick or taking holiday days they'd rather not do, simply because people need to be at home for whatever reason, for a few hours or for a day or two.
Yeah, an option is always a good idea. And with many offices sort of moving to a hosted solution, in theory, it should become easier and more common for people to have access to this. You know, so many people were doing subscriptions for 365, subscriptions for sort of a hosted network. So hopefully there should be less tech issues for it.
Yeah, hopefully. But you're right, the access is certainly a lot easier now than it was even a few years ago. But there's no point having this remote access connection if it takes a day to get it working from home. It needs to be quick and easy. Something happens that morning, maybe your car's broken down, trains are cancelled, your child has a fever, whatever it is. Instead of losing that working day, if it's your choice and you're able to, you can remote in and still stay productive. Not that it gets to 3 p.m, finally IT have given you access and you've basically lost a day.
Exactly. And as we know, if it gets to 3:30, you're not going to be doing any more work anyway, are you?
That's what you want.
Yeah, exactly. And we've actually taught virtual classrooms where the majority of attendees have been working from home or attending from home.
Yeah, and recently we had a guy on our facilitator training course. He had a sick child at home and he'd been remote working all week, still attended our course at the set time. And just think, if they'd been forced to take that week off, maybe as holiday or unpaid or whatever the situation is, that would then have a knock-on effect to the organisation and the productivity of that person, let alone any kind of emotional or negative attitude issues that might have caused.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, those other issues, negative or attitude issues, these are the hidden costs that are so hard to identify. A week off a holiday when it's not really a holiday, and then you have burnout later in the year, or they come back to work with an extra week's worth of work to complete, and then just stress that is it caused by that.
And this is why, if it's possible, there should be a remote access solution in place that can be used if needed and the situation is right. My neighbour right now is working from home because she's got a cold and she just doesn't want to drive 6 hours or whatever it is up to Sheffield and have a meeting and infect somebody else with a cold. So it's just like, well, let's remote from work and have a web meeting. At the end of the day, it's down for an organisation to decide if it's right for their business and their staff. But I see far more benefits than risks or challenges.
Well, since you just mentioned, now this is my point to go off track here, but since you've just mentioned risks or challenges, what would you say they are?
Well, there are obvious security risks. You don't want somebody remotely connected to anything like finances, HR records, whatever, and leaving their device on the train. We've all seen news items like that.
Yeah, often the government, but yeah.
Moving swiftly on. Obviously you need policies and procedures in place for managing these risks, and you need to communicate those, train them. A lot of it's common sense, but you need those kind of things in place to help people do the right thing and do their job well. And we also mentioned the issue of maybe perception of people not actually working and the project management systems or a good management system to deal with that. So some of it might be educating staff around people remote working are still working. It's not a reward, it's not a holiday, it's just another day of working.
And what about sort of potentially people working too much, maybe?
Well, that's always a challenge, is that we hear people, or, stories of people working via remote access till, 4 a.m. And then they're physically in the office at 8 or 9 o'clock the next day. And I think this is where the awareness, maybe the policies and strong management needs to be in place to mitigate this happening. I used to have a manager in one organisation who would say one thing about work-life balance and do another, that we'd be getting emails 11 o'clock at night, 5:30 a.m. And that didn't, the message and the behaviour didn't match up and just didn't lead us in a way that I felt was congruent.
Yeah, and I guess this is a difficult thing with so much of this. We've got our emails on our phone, we can remote access in. It can almost be like, it claws into your personal life. And
I think actually there can be a point, going back to the kind of, I've got a sick child at home. At what point is it right for you to be working from home? And at what point is it right for you to not be working and to be looking after your child, or whatever that situation is, where your attention isn't split? So there is a flip side of that as well.
Yeah, for sure. And this all comes back to, I guess, the primary thing for the end user or the staff member is quality of life. And that also goes back to the organisation as well. It's the quality of life of your staff. Yes, you want, efficiency, and you want to keep productivity high, and you don't want to have these down points. But a massive part of that is providing the ability for your staff to work comfortably and correctly, I guess, in whatever the situation is.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, it's keeping the organisation going. And what does that? It's people. So your people need to be safe, they need to be happy, they need to be motivated, and all of those other things.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to circle back to what you said earlier about conference software or using virtual classroom platform for remote workers. Now we've delved into it a bit more of how it works in the organisation, or could work in the organisation. Off the top of your head, with something like, say, Adobe Connect or WebEx, how could they actually help a remote working team?
Well, these platforms, by their nature, are obviously designed to connect people together who are physically remote. And as I said, you can get your team, whether they're all remote or some are in physical offices or different physical offices, all connecting at the same time. You can chat, like literally conversation with each other. You can use the typing chat areas, and you can obviously co-work. And I think this is where it can get quite cool, is if you really start utilising more of those features. For example, people can start having private chats with other small groups, like a Slack conversation, and it could be developed further live or face-to-face. Imagine a colleague is having an issue on a document. Do a screen share, others jump in to explain what to do to help. You could have breakout rooms for different members to work on different items, and then bring everyone back together. A lot of this isn't that new in terms of technology, or for some teams in terms of what they actually do now. But every individual team and company is obviously on a different learning journey. And if people think about their needs, I think they can come up with some really cool things to help boost that efficiency, that productivity, outcomes, and obviously the skills in using these platforms.
Yeah, I think all of that is absolutely great. And I was just thinking, just as you said some of that, how quickly you can run a poll to get feedback, or have an idea, a brainstorm with a whiteboard. The collaboration could be really amazing. And I think this is one of the things that, we'll probably go into this in a bit more detail in a second, but I think where we co-work and we're already in the system, it's how many times have I sat there and gone, oh, I'll just screen share. Because it's just, we're in the platform already. It's not the fact of, I've got to send you an email to get onto Adobe Connect to then do it. It's the fact we're already there.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of just, hey, can I come and look at my monitor? It just is really easy because you're already in the system, you're already live. And how often does somebody sort of call across an office for another person to say, hey, come over here, or a group of people into a side office to say, let's get some ideas around this, whatever it is that you're doing. And you can quickly get on microphones and get everybody's attention. And as you said, screen share, get collaboration, everybody work on a whiteboard. And there are loads of other tools out there as well. And you can scroll back through a chat window and see what people have said or shared.
It does make me think about the Adobe Connect Customer Summit, which we went to this year. And there was a person there whose organisation sort of utilised advanced features in Adobe Connect. And I won't go into all of it because I didn't really understand how it worked, to be fair. But basically, what that person did, they made it so you could sort of do... in layman's terms, I guess, like an advanced poll or advanced sort of criteria in Adobe Connect, and then they could analyse it and display that quite quickly in the platform. Yeah. And what this person was doing, they had actually been requested by people sort of running face-to-face conferences or even face-to-face meetings of, say, 30, 40, 50, stakeholders, whatever it is. And they were asked, actually, can you come in and get all of this working on everyone's laptops? Because we prefer doing this than having like a different face-to-face solution. It's easier for us all to be in Adobe Connect, answer a poll, type a question, ask something, than to actually use a different solution. So even though we're all face-to-face in the same location, we want to be sort of connected this way.
Yeah, and technology is enabling that. We're used to having our phones that connect us to information and each other as well. So a computer, laptop, tablet, even in those face-to-face conditions, for the ease of use of the tools and data, and that was the key point there, it was the gathering, analysis and display of data, it's only going to increase, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, I think sort of early next year, we're actually going to be training an organisation that has specifically requested interactive meeting training. So to actually make they've obviously identified their meetings, they're not getting the right feedback or the right motivation or whatever it is. And so we're actually doing some bespoke training. And potentially this would be something that we consider putting into our own portfolio of training, something of sort of a service that we offer, because it, like you say, this is the way this is going, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to get bigger and brighter, and in some respects everything is getting easier, which is good, but the nuances of doing it really well, that's a little bit different.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, I want to finish off this podcast about live online learning and bringing this in with remote working, how they are connected or not connected, do you think?
Interesting question. On the surface, they are obviously two completely different things. Remote working is all about working away from a centralised location, whilst live online learning is about bringing people together to learn and practice something. Now, the crossover comes from the technology and how to interact with it. I think the key learning point here is the ease of access, allowing people to either work or learn with no travel and potentially in locations of their choosing.
Yeah, and this ease of access from one to the other does it go hand in hand, do you think? People who are often doing one would expect more or be more open to the other one?
I think that's hard to quantify, but I think from a tech standpoint, if you're used to remote working or used to attending virtual classrooms, I think the person would find it less of a technological barrier to do the remote working and vice versa. So obviously, I'm kind of happy with live online learning. And recently I've been looking up at some training courses, and most of which are face-to-face, absolutely great. One of which was done remotely over an 8-week period. And I thought, yeah, cool. Because I'm open to that. Other people, that might not be the right thing, or it might be a new experience for them.
Yeah, I guess so. This is kind of the psychology of just because you remote work, that can seem sort of quite simple in someone's head. It's like, rather than being in the office, I'm just working from home. Whereas actually live online learning can have a bit of a different thing of, well, I've learned in a classroom with a teacher behind a desk. Yeah, how is that going to work?
That's how it's always been done.
Yeah, so maybe it doesn't cross as, if you've done live online learning, remote working seems, well, okay, that's fine. But remote working doesn't necessarily mean that you're au fait with live online learning.
Yeah, and I think also it depends on the type of remote working you've done. If you've been at home on your kitchen table, you and your laptop, and that's all it is, there's no phone calls, no virtual meetings, nothing like that, then actually that can seem like a bigger obstacle because you've been head down doing some work and not had the communication, not had the connection with people. So therefore it can feel like, well, how can that work for live online learning?
And what do you think about sort of the demand from people in an organisation, or perhaps the organisation itself? If you were providing more opportunities for remote working, should you also be providing more live online learning options also?
Well, you hit me with some hard questions today, Mike. I think there's lots of ways to approach that question. In my thinking, I feel that if you're an organisation that's promoting greater flexibility with a larger remote workforce opportunity, augmenting that with live online learning obviously makes absolute sense. Demand from staff members who are remote working to get more live online learning, I'm not sure. It can make great sense. And if you have that flexibility in how you work, then obviously you'd like that in how you learn. Does it make sense to remote work 5 days a week or a portion of the week? If you want specific internal training, you have to then go to the office on that day or travel to a specific location. That feels kind of less obvious. So I think it depends a lot on the organisation.
Yeah, for sure. I could imagine sort of remote working and then, say you always remote work on a Wednesday and then the training you want, the management training or whatever it is on the Wednesday and you have to go to the office. How are you going to feel about that? And I guess this goes with what you've said. It's the flexibility. If you're flexible in remote working, why can't you be flexible and efficient in live online learning?
Yeah, and technology is moving us into a situation where we want entertainment or information right now at our fingertips. And organisations can provide more resources, more options, more live online learning, and keep their staff skilled and potentially ahead of the game, whether they're remote or not.
Yeah, and I wonder if an organisation was trying to implement more remote working, then would more live online learning interventions about remote working or webinar style information to update mindsets would make sense also. Does that go hand in hand?
Well, you've got a good point. And as we mentioned earlier about utilising your platform for remote workers for conference calls or co-working, if you've invested in a piece of software, get the most out of it. Have staff connected to it and co-working, or use it for really interactive meetings. Run those information webinars and virtual classrooms. All of this will only make staff more aware of it, how it works, and utilise it all better. It will, a rising tide lifts all ships.
I think that makes perfect sense to me. And I think some really sort of profound ideas about the future of where all of this could go and where some people are right now, I'm sure.
Yeah, it can all seem daunting maybe for some people, but others are on this journey or way beyond where we're talking about. And I think it's about investing in the systems, also the staff skills to provide remote working, interactive meetings, webinars, live online learning, and it's all the way to go. And that's why we focus on it.
Amazing conversation today, Jo. Really enlightening. Thank you so much.
So that was a recording we did last year, and I think the relevance to now is actually more timely.
Yes, we are seeing sort of more companies focus on remote meetings. We've got training scheduled throughout the year for one of our clients who wants to ensure that people are doing this really well. And I guess this brings us back to those conferences that are going online.
Yeah, conferences being run live online has been growing over the years. Colin Steed used to run them 5 or 6 years ago, but they're starting to get more and more traction as they can more easily and cheaply gather speakers and participants from around the world.
And you've attended some of those live online conferences and you've actually been sort of quite an integral person in some of them as well. So the ones you've attended, what has the quality been like?
Well, it's the same as any conference session or any webinar for that matter. There are some great ones and there are some not great ones. The conferences that are going to be live online now need to be thinking about how are they going to run those seminar sessions out to an audience that are joining in a different way, and for some people potentially a new way. Traditionally, these might be more presentation oriented, but it's still making sure that the slides work well in the platform, the speaker knows how to use the tools appropriately, and that their sound quality is really good. They also need a great host or producer to make sure everything runs smoothly.
And I guess an advantage of sort of live online is that questions could be easier to manage. People have got a chat window, or you could have a dedicated sort of chat pod or whatever it is that you want to do, or questions and answers sort of panel. So I guess that could make it easier.
Yeah, and I hope they have those switched on. A lot have the question panel or pod switched on for people asking questions, and that can separate it from the chit chat, which is really good from a management point of view. But also, I really hope that the chat is switched on because you can interact with each other and learn loads, network with each other. And if you don't have that switched on, you might as well record videos and let people watch them when it's convenient to them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think actually by having that chat, how quickly you can just sit there and go, here's my Twitter handle, here's my LinkedIn profile, and you still get that element of networking. Actually, it might even be easier than, or better than, when you've got 500 people sitting down watching, a seminar.
It can be. So, I love conferences for the point of speaking to people and getting to know people or new people and so on. I always say that. But when you're live online, it's really easy to say, hey, @Bob, I agree with your comment, or I think this, or add something to it. Whereas that's not always so easy to just turn around to the person next to you and go, great point, or I disagree, or start chatting if people are in a group. That part could be easier online for some people.
Yeah, for sure. Some really good points. And I'm sure these big conferences that are now going online will have some great webinar sessions for people. And, if investment and, this could be an opportunity for, if these go well, that people could do more in the future.
Yeah, I hope so.
Okay, well, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for chatting sort of before and during the podcast and now after the podcast. And thank you for our listeners for putting up with the fact that we've got sort of 3 bits that we've sandwiched together here. And we wish everyone the best in the future.
Thank you for listening. We really hope you enjoyed it and look forward to your feedback and your comments. If you like the podcast, please remember to subscribe and to share. You can follow Mike on Twitter @MikeLightBulb. You can follow me on Twitter @LightBulbJoe, and for other updates @MomentLightBulb. You can also find our podcasts on YouTube, along with more great content. If you're in need of virtual classroom training, check out lightbulbmoment.online. For our blogs, lightbulbmoment.info. And remember our free community for questions and resources, lightbulbmoment.community.